homework is to memorize this and write it 15 times.
Welcome to the coolest, hippest half hour of fun on TV. This is Brain Stew with Jennifer Floyd.
This week on Brain Stew, we open our ears to the sounds of classical music. We visit an orchestra, listen to their unique tunes, and check out all the types of instruments that make up an orchestra. Of course, you gotta try this week's experiment and find out what's at the library on classical music. How's this for a grand piano? Brain Stew is next, and we're gonna jam out to classical music. Hey, have you heard any good tunes lately?
What?
Tunes, you know, music. Music is everywhere. It's on the radio, it's on television, it's on tapes, it's on CDs, and it's even in concert halls. You know, there are so many different types of music. Where do I begin? Classical, country, contemporary, disco, funk, gospel, heavy metal, hip-hop, pop, rock and roll, and jazz. I mean, that's just to name a few. Hey, what's your favorite type of music?
My favorite type of music is top 40. Classical because it relaxes me and it stimulates my mind.
Pop.
Classical, I play the strings.
Well, jam on. You know, most of the types of music we like to listen to today haven't been around for very long.
Really?
Yeah, really. Take hip-hop, for example. I love to dance to hip-hop, and I love to teach aerobics to hip-hop, but when I was born, that type of music just wasn't around. Classical music, on the other hand, has been around for 400 years. It started in Europe in about 1600, and it's still being played around the world today. Of course, we all know that back in the 1600s, there were no radios or televisions around. So, in order to hear classical music, people had to attend concerts at concert halls. Guess what? Today, people still love to go to concert halls, like this one, to hear classical music performed by an orchestra.
What's an orchestra?
Basically, an orchestra is an ensemble or group of musical instruments. Of course, there are musicians behind those musical instruments, or we wouldn't hear anything. Most orchestras perform in great concert halls, or some perform outside in amphitheaters. Listening to classical music on a CD or tape is great and all, but hearing an orchestra perform live, right in front of you, classical music is something you'll never forget.
Who created classical music?
People call composers create or write music. Some important composers you might be familiar with are Johann Sebastian Bach.
Who?
Bach. Here, ever heard this? Bach was one of the first great classical composers. He was German, and he helped develop the art of harmony. What's harmony, you ask? It's very easy. Let me show you. Harmony is when you play or sing more than one note at the same time. Since I'm not a very good singer, I'm going to use this piano to show you harmony. C and an E. Ready? Two different notes, but I'm playing them at the same time. Listen how nice they sound. That's harmony, guys. Harmony. I'm playing three at the same time. Harmony. That's harmony, guys. Developed by our old pal Bach. Another famous composer of classical music was an Austrian by the name of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Check out his tunes from the late 1700s. Mozart began composing piano pieces when he was just 6 years old. Unfortunately, Mozart only lived to be 35. Think of what he could have done if he lived longer. Of course, one of the most well-known classical composers of all time was a man by the name of Ludwig van Beethoven. I know that sounds familiar. That was Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, composed in 1808. That was roughly 58 years after Johann Sebastian Bach. Like Bach, Beethoven was from Germany, and he enjoyed writing music for orchestras. Listen to this. Besides writing tons of other things, Beethoven composed 9 symphonies in his lifetime. 9!
What is a symphony?
A symphony is the greatest instrument ever invented because it is a combination of many different instruments all playing together to make one beautiful sound.
How many musicians are there in an orchestra?
It can vary. In Virginia Symphony we have 77 people, but it can even go up to 100 or 110 if we need them for a special piece that we're playing.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's a lot of people all playing together.
What types of instruments are in an orchestra?
Well, they're basically four families of instruments. The strings, of course, and that's violin, viola, cello, bass. The violin is the smallest, it plays the highest. The viola is a little bigger, it plays a little lower. Down to the cello, down to the double bass. The bigger the instrument gets, the lower it plays in pitch. The woodwinds, flute, oboe, clarinet, bassoon. The brass instruments, horn, trumpet, trombone, tuba. And a whole battery of percussion from timpani to triangle.
Is the piano considered?
Piano is also
It's
considered
percussion.
part of the percussion
Is
instruments.
it really? And that's a part of it.
Mhm.
But all acoustic, right?
Yes,
No electrical.
No electrical instruments.
What instrument section is largest in an orchestra?
In terms of numbers, it's the strings. We have the most strings. In some orchestras, you can have as many as 60 people just playing stringed instruments. Well, they're really the heart of the orchestra. They're really at the core of everything we play. The strings are right there, and there are many pieces written for strings alone. So in a hierarchy, I guess the strings are the real lifeblood of the orchestra.
Who leads the musicians?
Well, because they're such a big group, they do need somebody helping them all work together, and that's what the conductor does. That's basically the conductor's job, is to bring all of those 80 people together, playing music in the same tempo with the same concept of what the piece is about.
And that's what you do.
That's what the conductor does.
You're the conductor. And you use that baton, is that what it's called?
We use a baton because it's easier for the musicians to see us if we use a baton. And that gives them always the tempo and the pulse, and it indicates all kinds of things like dynamics, or whether it's loud or soft, articulation, how notes are played long or short. Lots of different things are communicated without saying a word, just by using the baton.
And so you're really instructing the musicians on how to play a piece. It's like your interpretation of it.
We all work together to make that happen,
Sure.
but yes.
Oh, that's so neat. What does it feel like to be up there in front of all those people?
It's tremendous fun. Of course, the big responsibility, but to be in the middle of all of that sound, be in the middle of all that talent, because when we're talking about the Virginia Symphony, we're talking about incredibly talented musicians. To be right in the middle of that and have that sound around you, it's really like being in the middle of a giant instrument. It's wonderful.
How do musicians prepare for a performance?
They spend a lot of time on their own practicing their parts and practicing their instruments at home. And then when they come together, when we're all together, we have 4 rehearsals to put on a concert. So it's not very much time, so I have to rely on them to really have done all of the technical work at home.
So you have to do homework.
They do. They work, practice many hours a day.
How do musicians know when to play their instrument?
Well, they have their part in front of them, and it tells them when to play. But also the conductor can help in that instance, too. I'll be looking at certain people and bringing them in, but a lot of information is right on their music. So, and they're complete professionals. They really.
So you have to know how to read music in order to be a musician.
You do have to know how to read music,
Yeah.
and you have to be able to count carefully. You have to be able to pay attention. You have to be able to cooperate. That's very important, because if you're teamwork, if you're playing with lots of other people, you have to think about them and how you fit in with them and how you can work together. That's the beautiful thing about playing in an orchestra. It's a team.
Why should kids like me listen to an orchestra?
Because it's thrilling. The wonderful thing about music is that it's not limiting. It sets your imagination free. Whether you're 10 years old or 70 years old, you can use your imagination to create the most beautiful experience for yourself. Music does that. It just sets you free to imagine anything you want in the most beautiful world possible. So listening to music is extremely exciting. It's dramatic, it's passionate, it's thrilling.
So, has Brain Stew brought music to your ears yet? Well, up next, we find out what makes music and what causes all the sounds we hear when we listen to an orchestra. Back in a sec. for a moment about the orchestra playing classical music. All the musicians and all the instruments come together and make these incredible sounds.
Okay, but how is sound created?
Well, basically sound is created by vibrating objects, and these vibrations cause waves. A good example is when a rain drops into a puddle of water and you kind of see the waves spanning out. Now, waves travel through a couple different things. They can travel through the air, or they can travel through water. Once they travel, they hit your ear, and then your brain perceives it as sound. Anything that creates a sound produces these sound waves.
Can we actually see sound waves?
Well, actually, Jennifer, you know that sound waves causes changes in air pressure, and these increases and decreases can be measured by an oscilloscope.
An oscilloscope.
An oscilloscope.
All right, that's what this is right here.
Exactly. So if you speak into the microphone, you're going to see your sound waves measured.
Hello. Whoa.
So it measures increases and decreases in the air pressure.
So if I talk really quietly, it doesn't show up very much.
But if I talk really loud like that, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And the frequency is what? What is that?
The frequency is how many times your sound wave vibrates in a second.
Wow.
Yeah, so your sound waves are vibrating a lot.
Yeah, especially when I'm screaming into the microphone.
Exactly. The lower the pitch, the less it's going to vibrate in a second.
La la la! High pitch!
Whoa.
High pitch sound, high pitch.
Megan, besides using something electronic like an oscilloscope, how else can we actually see these sound waves that we're talking about?
Well, this part of the exhibit is going to do that. This is going to, we'll start up here with the slinky.
Okay.
And we'll show you exactly what a sound wave looks like when it's traveling through air. Pretend that the slinky is the air around us.
Okay.
Okay? And when I hit this drum, you're going to see the compression move down the slinky. And that's how a sound wave travels. And it'll keep traveling until it just weakens and dies out.
So it doesn't ever really come back. It just comes back to our ear.
Well, you're going to see it come back a little bit because it's hitting something, causing it to bounce back.
Okay, but in the air, it's not going to hit. It's just going to keep going and going.
Unless it hits your ear and then you hear it.
And that's exactly what we hear sound. Oh, that's neat. And that's all this is. It's just a drum. Nothing electronic about this,
No,
right?
just a drum.
And a slinky. I used to play with slinky.
And slinky's great.
I had no idea they could let you see sound waves.
Exactly.
This is really
Slinkies
cool.
are great for science.
All right, now, what else we got here?
Well, this is kind of similar to what we saw with the oscilloscope. And this is actually just another drum, but it's going to graph decreases and increases in pressure. So when I hit this part of the drum, it's going to cause air pressure to move through and move the pin so you can see exactly what's happening here.
All right.
So if you start it,
That's graphing the sound waves.
showing you exactly what's happening.
Okay, and a higher pitch obviously makes the sound waves higher.
Right.
Okay, or higher, and
Right.
then the lower ones, like you're doing right now, it doesn't make it move very much at all. And this is all air. This
is all air.
nothing electronic here.
Nothing in it.
Megan, on the oscilloscope, when I made really low-pitched sounds, it didn't vibrate very much, and it didn't go up very much. My sound waves were lower.
Right.
What causes an instrument to change pitch?
Well, that all depends on length. And right here we have an example of a pipe organ.
Yeah.
And the longer the air column inside the case, the lower the pitch. Because the air is vibrating inside, but it's vibrating slower
Then say this column.
than the small one. Because what's happening, and let me see if I can demonstrate it, is that it's forcing air. So that's very low.
All right.
The air has further room to move inside that column, but
So
there's
it can
less room in something smaller, which makes it high because it's vibrating more quickly.
So fast, because there's not much room for it to go.
That's right.
What about that one? That sounded like a... Ooh, That's low too, but then this one's much lower.
Even lower.
Yeah, because it's bigger and it's wider.
Right.
Okay guys, the instruments that are used in an orchestra are called acoustic instruments because they don't use electricity to make music.
So how do the instruments in an orchestra make music?
Well, to make a sound, you have to have a vibration. So with each different instrument, something different vibrates.
Exactly.
So if you have a woodwind instrument like a clarinet
Yeah,
or
oboe or something.
exactly,
Yeah.
they have a reed, and the reed vibrates to make the sound.
Okay, so that's not electrical, obviously.
No.
Okay, what about brass instruments like the French horn or the tuba?
the player's lips vibrate.
Oh,
So that's what makes the sound that you hear coming out of the
tuba or the French horn.
Exactly.
Okay, now violins are also in orchestras,
Right.
Okay? What makes a violin make it sound?
The strings on the violin vibrate. This is going to show you how the string on the violin
I
vibrates.
see it.
Do
I
you
see it.
that?
Yeah, it's going like. I mean, I can see it actually vibrating back.
Okay,
and
now
forth.
if you stick your finger on the string, it's going to change the tension on the string, and it's going to make the pitch higher.
Longer string, lower pitch.
Exactly.
Shorter string, higher pitch. Even shorter.
Ooh.
That's what the musicians are using. They're using their fingers to either put tension on the string or to shorten the length of the string.
Right, to
or
change
lengthen
the
it,
sound.
To change the pitch of the sound. So no electricity here.
No electricity.
Okay, now how about this? A piano. I play the piano, or I've been playing the piano ever since I was little.
Uh-huh.
A piano is not an electrical instrument.
No, and you would think sometimes that it is, but it's actually an acoustic instrument because it has strings that vibrate.
Okay, and it's considered a percussion, right?
Yes.
All right, let's go check out the piano.
All right?
So this is what the inside of a piano looks like?
Yes.
Oh, cool, look at all those strings. I never knew, because I never get to see the inside of it.
When you play the piano or you hit a key, that actually causes a hammer to hit a string, which makes the string vibrate, which is why you get the sound.
Okay.
So if we pluck a string, you can see exactly what it looks like when it vibrates. You see that vibrate?
Now, you know, Megan, when I'm really looking closely, you only pluck one string, but it looks like the second one's moving also. What's up with that?
Well, that is called sympathetic vibration. And when you pluck that one string, the energy that causes the sound wave is going to bounce off of the other string.
That's close to it.
Right, and cause it to vibrate as well.
That's what gives a piano its awesome sound, isn't
Right, it makes it a full-bodied tone.
Hey, check out this big piano. Look familiar? It should. It was the same piano used in Tom Hanks' movie, Big. Up next on Brain Stew, we try this week's experiment, and we head over to the library to check out this week's Multimedia Minute. Now, while I play some classical music on this big piano, why don't you check out this brain strain? Back in a sec.
Here's what you need to do this week's experiment on the pitch of sounds. You need 2 buckets, a bag of rocks, some string, and 2 pens and a pair of scissors. And now the procedure. First, you cut the string twice as long as the table. There we go. Next, you take the buckets and tie them to each end of the string. Make sure the buckets hang freely over each side of the table. Now you take the markers and place them under the string. Now you need to fill the buckets halfway full of rocks. Whew, these rocks are heavy. All right, do you think you can handle this? All you have to do now is pluck the center of the string with your finger. Pretty cool, huh? Remember this pitch. Now move the pens closer to the center and pluck the string again. to hear that change in pitch? Moving the pens closer together created higher pitched sounds. Here. Why, you ask? Well, let me tell you. The more the string vibrates, the higher the pitch. Length and tension are two factors that affect the pitch of sounds produced by a stringed instrument. We created tension by adding rocks to the buckets, which caused the string to vibrate faster. We also shortened the length of the string by moving the pens closer together. The shorter the string, the faster it vibrated. Both tension and a shorter string caused us to hear a high-pitched sound. Stringed instruments like the violin produce high-pitched sounds when the string is held down with one hand while being plucked with the other.
Today on Brain Stew, we've been talking about acoustic instruments, or instruments that don't use electricity to produce sound. Check out how electricity is changing my voice.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So that's our show for this week on classical music. I hope your big brain is stewing with tons of information on classical music and the people who bring it to our ears. Until next week, keep that big brain of yours stewing, because you never know what you'll learn. Excuse me a moment. Ooh, ugh. Yeah, I have to slam on it. 1, 2, 3.
Here's what you need to do this experiment this week.
Tell me, what is the largest?
Listening to classical music on a CD or tape is awesome.